Hello, hello! Welcome to An Abundance of Books Best Books of 2024. It was a weird reading year. I ended up reading 61 books, and I found it hard to find 10 that I truly loved. There's probably the top 4 I feel super confident in. Everything else I think could be in a different order on a different day, or I have a little bit of a problem with. I even got some 4 stars to sneak in here, things that have been lasting with me, which I actually think is a good change because books are complicated and 4-star isn't necessarily a measure of absolutely everything. So I've got enough to talk to you about. Let's start with honorable mentions. My most cheater answer is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrun. This was a reread for me this year. It's still just as amazing as ever. It's a gay romance built on a bachelor type premise. I have tabbed the heck out of it, and it's kind of a perfect book. I just need to shout this one out. Then I've got Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This is a great book, but it takes a little bit too long to get going. But the payoff is so excellent that it's definitely one that stuck with me. And then None of This Is True by Jewell. A book that I love, but I have a hard time recommending due to subject matter. I think it's an excellently crafted mystery, but it's a hard one to talk about, so I'm not going to. That's it for honorable mentions. Now we'll talk about 10th place. I read The Final Empire in 2023. Sorry, my years are all confused now because it's 2025 for me in this timeline, and so last year is awful. Anyway, I read Final Empire in 2023 and give it 5 stars. And then this year, I finished up the trilogy right at the beginning with Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages. Both of these were 4-star books for me. They don't live up to, bad at product placement, The Final Empire. The Final Empire is a perfect book, but it does feed into the trilogy. Just neither of these accomplished the character work that I think was done in Final Empire, but they have so many high points, such excellent writing. It's Brandon Sanderson. Like, this is not a hot take that Mistborn is very good. I just couldn't put it higher than this because both of these only got 4 stars for me, but the overall experience is definitely a 5, and I look forward to reading more Sanderson in the future, though I don't want to commit because Stormlight is so big. In the 9th place, we have Foe by Iain Reid. This is another 4-star book, but it's stuck with me since I read it in January, February. It's about a couple, and the man in it, I think his name is Junior, has been decided that he's going to go on this mission to space. And it doesn't have anything to do with space. It's about the couple and this government agent who is interviewing him and what comes with that. Another one where the journey is slow but the payoff is so good, and all of the little clues in it. Like, I wrote a dissertation about this book in my Goodreads review because it's so complex in a way that I think Iain Reid is really good for. It's just so weird. And a great book for guessing some stuff but not guessing other stuff. I always love that, so I would definitely recommend it, but it's the kind of book where you have to read the whole thing to really get a sense of it, if that makes sense. Number 8 is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is just as good as everyone on booktube promised me it would be. It's got such beautiful writing. It's such a complex story. Like, these are real people who are messy and make bad choices, and things don't always make sense, but they feel like real people with real problems, despite them being vampires. I do also love I don't know how to say this, but I love a book like an Adiru, like a Dowry, with someone who lives for a very long time and gets to experience history. I don't love a historical fiction, but I like dipping my toe into different eras. I don't know what that qualifies as, but if you have any suggestions, let me know, because that's something that I have found really enjoyable. Number 7 is Leech by Hiron Ennes. This is another one that I read pretty early on last year, and I can't stop thinking about it. Another 4-star. Dowry was a 5, but a novella, and Leech is a 4, but a longer novel and a lot more going on. It's another discovery kind of book where it doesn't give you a lot of answers, but you can kind of pick up on things as they go along. It's a post-apocalyptic story about a doctor, a nameless, genderless doctor who goes to this chateau to help someone has been murdered. Is that how it starts? And things devolve from there. You learn about the world, you learn about the characters, you learn about what this leech is. It's so good. It's so good, but it's just like, I wish it held my hand a little bit more. I wish there were real answers for things. There's a lot that's left up for interpretation, and I could have my interpretation of things, but sometimes I want someone to tell me if I'm right. And this didn't necessarily do that, but if the author has anything else coming out, which at last I checked they didn't, but I will check again because I am going to be reading it. We're at number 6 now, and I think all of the books from here on out I own, which means I went out and bought a copy after finishing it. So these are creme de la creme in my opinion. Number 6 is The Art Thief by Michael Finkel. This is a non-fiction book about a man who stole a bunch of art from a bunch of museums in the 90s. Let's say the 90s. Pulled off more than 200 heists, often in crowded museums in broad daylight. And so it's just the story of this guy and all of the art that he stole. The author also has interviews with the guy. He probably has a name. Stefan. He interviews Stefan about all of these things. And so you get his perspective on like what the pieces mean to him and why he's compelled to do these things. He also pulls in his girlfriend at a point. It's so interesting to me, and I love getting to learn about art too. This, I had to buy this because it's got some of the pieces in it, and so you need to be able to know when he's talking about like, I just needed this piece because this called to me. Like, I want to be able to see it and know it. I love a nonfiction like this. This is the only nonfiction on the list, but I am happy to have it here. Number 5 is another booktube darling. It is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is the story about a doctor lady who goes to a small town, and the small town boy with the baby goat who captures her heart. What's wrong with me? This is just a rom-com that is excellent on every level. It's so heartfelt but also funny. Like, it's not taking itself too seriously unless it needs to. Both of these people have rich independent lives that we get to focus on, like their friends and family, but it is still like a romance at the heart of it, and it works really well. It's small town, it's dual perspective. I've read some Abby Jimenez before and really liked it, but I found it a little too heavy. This one isn't heavy. Like, it deals with some more serious things, but it's got such a great tone overall, and I really love this one. At number 4, which I'm now thinking is too low on the list, but top 4, great. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. Another book I read right at the beginning of last year, which is very strange. The next 2 will have recency bias, so that's fine. This is the story about a woman named Mika Moon who is hired as a nanny to 3 magical children. It's a romance technically, but I didn't really care for the romancy parts of this. I loved the witchiness and the found family, very much in line with A House in the Cerulean Sea, if you've read it. I just love the writing here. I love the way that the children are written in here. I love a child with a true child's voice. And this one just does it so perfectly. Sobbing, constant sobbing, little bit of a mystery. Sangu Mandanna has another book coming out next year. I think it's been delayed once or twice, so I'm itching for it. But this is so good. You must read this. At number 3, we have The Starling House by Alix Harrow. This is my first Alix Harrow, and I have just always had a feeling that I am going to love her stuff. And I did. I'm shocked. I bought this because there was a pretty edition that I saw, and I was like, well, I simply must have it if I'm going to read it. But this one also features a bunch of illustrations, which I think all the editions do, because it's part of the story in a meta way that I won't spoil. This is the story of Opal, who is a down on her luck woman, and Starling House she walks by every day on her way to work at her dead-end job, and the house is calling to her. This is a book that's impossible to talk about because it's so twisty-turny. Not so twisty-turny. Where we start and where we end are vastly different, and I'm shocked that I loved this book as much as I did, because Opal's just kind of like a sad girl for most of this book. She's just kind of like whiny and miserable. Like, people reach out to her, but she can't accept love. This one also has a romance in it that I didn't care for, but I think it was able to take enough of a backseat, and I could just read them as friends. That's what I did. But this has a haunted house in it, which is one of my favorite things. It's got a story within a story. There's an author who wrote a book about Starling House that our main character has read and reflects on. There's a history of the town that's told multiple times through the book, with slight details being changed every time. It's got footnotes. It's everything a book could be, and I'm amazed that it pulls it off. It's very slow. It's like a slow, sad girl book. The writing also in this is just incredible. She's got such a unique voice, and I cannot recommend this one enough. I mean, I don't blame people if they don't like it, but I recommend it. My number 2 favorite... I'm gonna sneeze. No, I'm not. My number 2 favorite book of the year is The Mountain and the Sea by Nayler. This book took me a month to read. It sort of put me in a slump, but mostly because I was loving it so much that I fear picking it up because of what it's going to do to me. This is about so many things. The main story here is we're in a future dystopian Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City and outside. Not all of it's in Ho Chi Minh, but it's about our main character Ha, who is a biologist, and she is summoned to this secret island where they have discovered an octopus who is starting to communicate. So that's the A plot of the book. She's also paired up with an android, the first one to like pass the Turing test or whatever, and so it's a lot about their relationship. There's 2 other timelines going on. One about a man who has been kidnapped and enslaved on a fishing vessel, and another one about a hacker who the government is threatening and trying to get him to do some mysterious thing. A lot going on in this book, but it's really just a vehicle for the author's ideas. This is a book about culture and community and consciousness, the 3 C's. Can I do another one? Did I say community? Climate change. It's about that too. It's a lot of ideas. So the characters speak in very matter-of-fact ways. They're scientists. There's excerpts before each chapter from an in-universe book explaining some concept. I just found everything about it fascinating, getting to learn how this octopus functions, getting to think about the way that we communicate with each other, like breaking things down. This is basically a nonfiction book wrapped in a narrative to trick you into reading about biology and philosophy, and I'm all about that. There were definitely some plot lines that I didn't love as much as others, and it can be a little bit slow at times. It's 450 pages. We could probably trim a little bit of that out, but I just think it's so interesting and so made for Julia. It's so grim and yet charming, and all of the sci-fi aspects in this are so interesting. There's so many robots, there's so much new technology that has a good mix of like being explained, but also there are things like, this is just a part of the world, like just don't think about it. This book ultimately is an argument for stuff matters. Like it's challenging you to care about things, and I think it was really effective and I loved it a lot. And so we've come to my best book of 2024, a book that I do own but do not have with me because literally yesterday I was talking to my best friend. I said this is my best book of the year and she took it to read it. That book is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. This was my first Nat Cassidy. I'm really excited to go back and read Mary. I think it's just going to be amazing. But this is another made for Julia book. Nestlings follows a couple moving into this New York City apartment building with their baby and the weird stuff that is happening in the building, the weird people that are in it, and how the building affects them. It follows both of their like personal lives. The couple, the woman is in a wheelchair after a birthing incident, and the man sucks. He's so annoying. Our main character, the woman, is also an audiobook narrator, so we get to talk a little bit about like that industry and stuff, which is super fun. But yeah, it's a story about motherhood kind of, but like mostly I'm just here for the romp. And the writing is so good. I wish I had the book with me to flip through and give you better thoughts about it, but it's just one that I love. I think about this book every time I think about an audiobook. I think about this book every time I think about a hardware store. I think about this book every time I think about New York. It's burrowed its way into my psyche in a way none of these other books have, and I love it. And it's my best book of 2024. That is all from me today. Let me know what your best book of 2024 was. If you have any recommendations for me, I'm very excited. I'm very motivated in my reading in 2025 right now anyway. So I'm hoping for some really good stuff. That's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. Goodbye.